There is a fable told by a mountain people living in the ancient highlands of New Guinea about a race between a snake and a bird. It tells of a contest which decided if men would be like birds and die, or be like snakes which shed their skins and have eternal life. The bird won, and from that time, all men, like birds, must die. Among those who tell why men must die is Wayak. His name means wrong, for as a child he showed unreasonable rage. As a man he learned to govern his temper, and though neither very rich nor very powerful, he has the respect of all with whom he lives. He is a warrior, a farmer, and leader of the band of men who guard the most dangerous sector of a frontier which divides themselves from their enemy. Often, while at his post, he busies himself with weaving, a task all men perform. In a village close to Wayaks lives a small swineherd. He is called Pua, having been named for the yellow clay these people put on when a relative has been killed or dies, when an enemy has been killed, and sometimes for no reason at all. The patches of color around the eyes and shoulders help to complete their image of themselves as birds. Usually alone, herding his foster father's pigs, smaller and more awkward than most of his playmates, Pua waits for manhood. Close to the mountain wall is Pua's village, Wuparainma. Near it are situated other villages, each inhabited by 20 or 30 closely related people. Wuparainma, like other villages, is connected by paths to places people must go to watch their pigs, to visit other villages, to walk the main salt trail north, to gather wood from the forests, or to go out to their gardens to plant, cultivate, and gather their many vegetables. Beyond the intricate system of ditches and gardens is the frontier. Between it and the frontier of the enemy is an uncultivated no man's land. There, on a low ridge that juts from the base of a lonely hill, is the major battleground, the Wara Bara. To the frontier in the early morning come the most ancient inhabitants of the valley. Along the whole frontier are high towers put up by each side to command a better view of the no man's land between them. The frontier is about 3 miles in length, and along it are nearly 30 towers. Homaklep, a village a few minutes on the same gentle slope from Wuppereinma, is where Wayak, his wives, his children, and a few other families live. Each morning, Wayak takes his spear or his bow and arrows and starts for his tower. His path takes him westward in the direction of the flat valley floor, where between the small villages and the frontier lies most of the garden land. Then southwestwards along a little river which comes down from the high hills behind Homaklep. He follows this until he reaches the nearer bank of a greater river, the Ik. Climbing a little bluff above the Ik, he reaches Pua Kolaba, his watchtower, named for the fact that close by there is plenty of yellow clay. Because the Ik is small enough for men to cross easily in shallow places, this river portion of no man's land is extremely dangerous, and bands of warriors frequently use it as a means of entering their enemy's territory. Among the many birds that dwell near it, only ducks are avoided, it being supposed that they carry harmful magic fed them by the enemy downstream. Some men believe that to eat a duck would blind them to an approaching raiding party. Sometimes, though, their sudden flight serves as a warning that men are near. As is his custom, Wayak starts out for the frontier. He is armed and wearing the only clothing he knows, a dried and hollowed gourd, which tied up with a bark string gives him all the covering he desires. 2 wives stay behind in the long family house. Today, Wayak is especially alert because it is already 2 weeks since he and all the others of his group celebrated their killing of an enemy warrior. And because, according to the way these people live, that killing must be avenged. These people's wars and raids yield neither territory, prisoners, nor plunder. They fulfill the obligations of the living toward the slain, toward, in fact, the ghosts of the slain. Unavenged ghosts bring sickness, unhappiness, and possibly disaster. It is for this reason they go to war, and for the reason that they like to. Reluctantly, Pua leaves the comfort of his mother's fire to begin another day with his foster father's pigs. People prize pigs highly, and to own a large herd is part of being rich and influential. Since they have such importance, a great responsibility falls to those who look after them, a fact which Pua knows but never fully comprehended. Old women, past the age when they might be mothers, often acquire a small pig and treat it as they would a child. On the main thoroughfare, the trail running north and south along the valley close to the mountain wall, are people on their way to work in gardens, or like Pua to herd their pigs. It is along this trail that people move to visit other villages lying off to either side, and to reach the salt wells 10 miles to the north and half a mile up the mountain wall. Already, some little girls who have their families' pigs to watch are passing the time by etching garden plots and drainage ditches in the hard ground. Laka, Wayak's wife, knows that her husband has by now reached his watchtower, and that it is time for her to leave Homaklep for their gardens. Having seen no sign of the enemy, Wayak makes a fire so that women who want to work in nearby gardens can see the smoke and know it is safe to come. On the Analarak, Laka looks toward Puakolaba and goes on. She will stay in the gardens through the morning and most of the afternoon. Her work is hard, but she enjoys the chance to see and talk with her friends from other villages. This morning, Wayak begins to weave a long bark fiber band on which he will later sew cowrie shells and bits of fur. These bands are used to decorate not the living, but the dead. They are presented at the funeral of close relatives, whether a man, a woman, or a child. During the morning, others have joined Wayak and take a turn in the tower. By midday, when most warriors are at their watchtowers or at work nearby, it is safe to assume that the enemy will not stage a raid. To be successful, a raid must come when least expected and at a place which for some reason is unguarded. Pua, by midday, has already spent a number of hours watching his pigs, and his concentration has begun to waver. For diversion, he arms himself and sets out to kill a dragonfly. As in so many of his enterprises, though, he fails. In other gardens, other men are doing the work that women cannot do as well. Most men, if they are married, will do little more in their gardens than the heaviest work. When that is done, their women come to plant and later to harvest. Younger, unmarried men must do a larger share of the garden labor. Pua, after taking home his pigs, comes back to where the men from his village still break the soil for a new garden. He watches, thinking of the day when he himself will be a farmer. The frontier, at least until morning, will be peaceful, since no wars or raids take place at night. The ghosts, which more than anything else rule the lives of these people, are known to be most active in the dark. At night, people stay inside, where ghosts are not so likely to come. They are outside, in the banana trees, taking bananas, in the gardens, spoiling plants, or most frequently of all, loitering on the paths, waiting for some passerby to accost. Not even the bravest warrior likes to be out at night, unless there is a full moon, and he can see and not be tripped or injured by the ghosts. Laka, safe home, puts into her own house her nets full of food. On the Anil-Rak, Wayak stops to look out of the emptying fields toward the Warabara and the twilight which fills with the shapes and sounds of swallows. The sight never fails to please him, even when his thoughts concern the enemy and what they must be planning. One morning, a few days later, an enemy raiding party came early to ambush some unwary visitor to the gardens, but they had chosen a dismal day, and most people were still in their houses. The enemy lost their patience and set fire to the small grass shelter beside one of the central watchtowers. This burning was a way to coax their adversaries from their villages. In minutes, the alarm, the song of the mountain dove, was passed, and Wayak with his light throwing spear runs to join his comrades. The younger warriors and those in the closest villages are already at the front. The older men, or those recently wounded, follow. The young run toward the front to join the skirmishers who face the enemy. No combat will start until each side has their men in position. Excitement is high, but the air is chill, and no battle is worth fighting very long in discomfort. The first arrows fly, and the front erupts in fighting. The numbers are few, though, and the fighting is not enthusiastic. It is the enemy who chose the day and provoked the confrontation. Wayak's group came to reassure the enemy of their will to fight, though now that will, on each side, wavers as the rain approaches. Many are worried that the rain will spoil their hair or feathers. The enemy came this morning to kill, to avenge the ghost of their warrior slain by Wayak's group more than 2 weeks before. Until they do, they live in a state of spiritual decline. Both sides believe that each man has a soul, to which they attribute the shape of seeds. These seeds at birth are planted in the solar plexus. They call them atayaken, or seeds of singing. Until a child is able to walk and talk, his atayaken are only rudimentary. As he or she grows older, the atayaken also grow. One's soul, or seeds, are especially sensitive to the death of a friend or member of the family. By contrast, causing the death of an enemy is tonic to the soul and lifts the spirit. Pua wonders, in the dry safety of his house, if any man from Uparainma has been killed. So quickly did the rain sweep over the mountain wall and onto the valley floor that the battle slackened almost as soon as it began. Many men were already starting home, and the front lines backed slowly apart, mindful that a sudden charge by either side was still a possibility. A few who were slow to leave find cover and warmth under the shelter on the field where, after killing, these people hold their victory celebrations. They will stay until the rain passes, talking about the way the battle had gone. They will exaggerate what really happened, and they will be glad that so far it was the enemy who had failed. The next morning, Wayak leaves for Pua Kolaba. Pua was told to take his pigs into the higher gardens behind his village, so as to avoid the wet valley floor. With his little digging stick, he'll cultivate a toy garden he and some other boys began some weeks before. At Pua Kolaba, his bow and arrows a few steps away, Wayak prepares some ground for planting. The day is still cool, though the sun will soon be high enough to make such work much harder. Even though he works near his weapons, and even though the watchtower is manned by a lookout, and there are men in the shelter beneath it, Wayak instinctively looks up at frequent intervals. Soon a fresh easterly wind comes up to carry the morning clouds away from the villages and gardens near the mountain wall. In the gardens, glad to be warm, some boys have collected in a sort of playground, an abandoned plot worn smooth by their games. Two groups of boys, each the enemy to the other, fire grass spears with ferocious accuracy. Their cries and tactics make the game a grown-up war in miniature. The game is fun, but serves as well the serious purpose of teaching boys how to become both men and warriors. The sharp points of the stiff grass can sometimes blind an eye and often bruise. They must learn, therefore, to dodge as well as throw, the art of war demanding both. Because for real enemies, a child or a woman can serve the purpose of revenge. Children learn early the dangers, which to live they must avoid. It is rare that either side is given an opportunity to take any but a man's life, but it is not unknown, and at the death of a child, the sorrow is great. From time to time, a watchtower must be mended. For this reason, Wayak has asked the men who guard Pua Kolaba to gather new vines and new poles to replace those which are broken or weak. Because of its importance to those who live within its protective circle, any work connected with making or repairing a watchtower must be accompanied by certain magic, such as making a toy bow and some toy arrows, the kind which would be used only by a small boy. Under the shelter, Wayak magically cleans the hands which have done the potent work with the feather of a parrot. In the gardens close to their villages, Pua and some friends find out which of them is strongest. The ritual at the tower, though extremely important, is not solemn, nor would the magic that is done be better if it were. The burnt grass is placed around the tower, and the little bow and arrows put in it, with a kind of gay confidence. It has been decided who is stronger, or perhaps only who is weaker. Early in the morning, Wayak's family passes the forest of Homoak at the foot of the mountain wall, on their way to the salt well. They carry parts of an old banana tree cut down the day before, which they will put in the well to soak up the brine. It is a long way, even to the foot of the wall where the trail starts upward to the well, half a mile above the valley floor. On their way, they hear distant warriors making the familiar imitation of the song of the mountain dove, announcing the war to be fought in a few hours. In front of the forest, Pua and his mother wait before starting their day's work in the fields. The fact that men go to fight does not disturb the rhythm of a woman's life, unless her husband, her son, or someone of whom she is especially fond is badly hurt or killed. The trail that Wayak's wife Laka and her companions take is very old, since there is no other salt well for miles around, and people have come to this one since they came to the valley, their feet wearing the rocks smooth. So smooth that when they are wet they are dangerous, even for sure-footed girls. So that others who follow will be more careful or more lucky. Laka leaves a magic warning. On the Warabara, the men gather for battle. The day is fine, neither cold and wet, nor too hot and dry. The whole ridge is for fighting, and both sides know it well. Wayak relaxes, waiting for his comrades and the enemy to signal their readiness by drawing close enough to fire. Only Mike Mo, who acts as leader, is especially concerned. The enemy badly wants the death that will restore the balance which they lost almost 3 weeks before. With so many men firing such a quantity of arrows, there is always a chance that one of the many wounds they are certain to inflict will bring about the death they want so much. Finally, Mike Mo's urgings take effect, and his men withdraw. It is customary that both sides, after fighting hard for a period of time, withdraw to nurse wounds, smoke cigarettes, and review the course of events. The arrows are not poisoned, but they are barbed and notched so as to break off on impact. One young warrior, pained but also pleased by his wound, was lucky that an older man has enough to hold as he works the arrow free. At the salt wells, La Ca is nearly finished, having spent more than 2 hours soaking the shredded parts of the old banana tree. The way home is long, and the tree much heavier with its new cargo of brine. Wayak was worried that so many arrows had found their mark, but most of the others were merely stung into more aggressive action. The enemy fell back, thinking that Wayak's group had been secretly reinforced. Having retreated, there was nowhere for them to go except off the ridge and onto some flat land just in front of their little mountain. There, almost at their own frontier, they turned and resumed fighting. At the end of the ridge, the pursuers caught their breath. Close by the gardens, where their warrior had been killed during a raid only 3 weeks before, the enemy reorganized, knowing there was still time for fighting. As long as there is enough light to see arrows in flight, and barring sudden rain, or what is much rarer, sudden death, a formal battle continues throughout the day. Wayak rests and lets the younger men exert themselves on the skirmish line. In this, its new phase, the battle is supervised by Nilik, who sends a fresh group to back up the skirmishers. Past water-worn patches of white sand, a wounded enemy is carried home on the shoulders of his friends. Nilik, not yet convinced the enemy was content to end the fighting, keeps a watchful eye, as do two young warriors who, a moment before, sought in vain to kill each other. Laka and the others have come close to home. They are tired from the long walk and the heavy work, but glad to know that no one had been killed. Had it been otherwise, they would certainly have been told by someone along the trail, since such news goes with the speed of sound, shouted from garden to garden and village to village. Laka did hear that Tuasi, a man from Wuparainma, was badly wounded, and she wondered how he was. The arrow had ended beneath the collarbone, and its tip broke off beneath the skin. Tekman, because he lives with Tuasi in Wuparainma, and because he is famous as a surgeon, knew that the only way to get the arrow out was to grip it with his teeth. Had it been barbed, as most arrows are, Tuasi would have had a far more difficult time and much less chance of living. At the end of the ridge, the others hurl abusive jokes instead of spears. The enemy, for now, is forced to listen. To patch the wound, some moistened leaves are bound in place with bits of long grass. To revive his Atayaken, literally to call back his seeds of singing from their flight to his backbone, a friend applies a wand of grass and murmurs magic words. Tekman makes the last of 4 punctures in the belly's wall to let out the blood turned dark by the enemy's arrow. The time to leave has come. For most, the walk ahead will take an hour, and no one wants to risk a meeting with a ghost. Tuasi will not have to walk, but he must be covered to protect him from the gaze of ghosts, which wounded men are careful to avoid. Tuasi starts home, his weapons and his life in the hands of men from his own village. Wayak has already filled an empty stomach and resumed a peaceful task. Not yet well, but already stronger, Tuasi watches Umwe do the magic that was meant to speed his recovery. Feathers taken from a friend's soiled headdress are stuck in the hollow tips of a dead branch. The purpose of the magic is to keep the ghosts at bay. He puts together in a bundle steamed grass, some sprays of wild raspberry, and a variety of other familiar things. It is a warning that the ghosts will notice and therefore stay outside the village. The boys are told to run down the village, sweeping it clean of all ghosts and ghostly influences as they go. Heat from the bright sun increases Pua's customary lack of watchfulness. He cares about his pigs, but his young mind wanders just the same. At the IK, Wayak and a friend have just refreshed themselves with water from the river. The day is more than half over, so they sit and talk, confident that the enemy has not chosen this day to stage a raid. When Pua came this morning, he had to leave one of his large pigs in its stall because it was too sick to walk. Having only 3 to watch meant that he could be a little less attentive than usual. With no other children to play with and sleepy from the hot sun, he picks an unsuspecting playmate and decides to doze. The day coming to a close, and knowing that the people working in gardens near Pua Kolaba will soon be leaving, Wayak goes back to his tower to wait until everyone has gone home, so that he and others standing guard can also leave. Pua, already home, weeps because his sick pig has died. In the morning, Pua stays in Wuparainma to watch the men prepare his pig for eating. Everyone shares in the work. One man makes the kindling for a fire to burn off the bristles before the pig is butchered. In Homaklep, Laka takes the salt-soaked pieces of banana tree that have dried, and with her daughter starts for the rock hearth above the village. This will be the final effort in a long and arduous labor that started with cutting down the tree she is about to burn. The strips of banana tree must be dry enough to burn completely. What can't burn would be wasted, and Lakar worked too hard for that. The salty ash is taken from the hearth to a fresh banana leaf, with the only fingers left on Lakar's hands. As a girl, the last two joints of several fingers were taken off with a blow from a stone axe. This is the custom when a close relation has been killed or dies. At first it was painful. Now it is only from time to time annoying. Lakar sprinkles fresh water on the little hill of ashes so that she can form a round and compact mass that will not sift through any openings in the leafy envelope.
Diet dog, sini kita bin diet dog. Dari macam ni kan dah. Dia pun berkun pak ter kada sini nengkeli ni.
The bundle of ashes is wrapped, and so is the funeral band, but in a dead banana leaf. Wayak covers the knitted part to keep it clean. Pua, back with his pigs again, decides to drink in Homawak, the forest at the bottom of the mountain wall. In the forest, there's a cold spring at which, unlike the IK River, it is safe to drink, since it is well inside the frontier. In the evening, Wayak decides he'll see how much he has to weave by measuring what is done. When finished, the band must stretch 1.5 around the fire, but he's impatient to see how it will finally look. Pua, who has come to visit with a friend, helps him lay it out. One day, a month after they killed the enemy, Wayak's group decides to hold an important religious ceremony. It is called Wam Kanake, literally pig treasure, an occasion when many related people gather to slaughter pigs, to feast, and to ritually renew their physical and spiritual security with magical acts performed upon their holy treasures, the sacred black and green stones to which they look for strength. Everyone gives whatever help is needed, such as cleaning out the cooking pit. Of great importance is the little fenced enclosure, put up as a resting place for wandering ghosts. This must be mended. The frontier is left unguarded, owing to the fact that everyone is at the feast. Today, 12 pigs will die. Behind the men's house, in a further courtyard, the fire is started that will heat the stones for cooking. When very hot, they will be lifted with great wooden tongs over to the cooking pit. When all the food is in, the new grass will be lifted over it, sealing in the steam. The pigs are arranged in front of the men's house to be admired and lose their ears and tails. Umwe, who made the magic to keep ghosts away from Tuasi, is in charge again. Wayak relaxes, glad to have a day not spent watching for the enemy. Finally, the labor to restore the ghost enclosure ends as fresh mud is smoothed around the little doorway. And to help the wandering ghosts to find their way, a path is drawn. As the grass is lifted up to seal the contents of the pit, the terrible news of death is known. A little boy lies dying by the Ike. By dusk, the boy was dead, from many spears that caught him as he walked toward the river for a foolish drink. His name was O.R.D, which means wrong path. Each life that's taken is celebrated by both sides. The ones that lose a life prepare a chair, the only furniture they know, to lift the corpse for ghosts to see while they cry and have their funeral. The ones that take the life dance and sing all day. Pua and O.R.D were friends, being close in age and disposition. When he is safely tied into his chair, the men bring out the woven shell bands which they have brought in honor of O.R.D's death. Shells are given ceremonially 3 times: at birth, at marriage, and at death. Pua and another boy lift up the intestines and carry them out of the village to be washed. They will take them to the same cold stream where O.R.D was bathed to dull his pain while dying. Though not a feast, the boys are asked to eat the ferns. The time comes to take the shell bands from Wayake. They will be put down before the most important men and then distributed among those who are closest to the boy. Because Wayake was killed close to his watchtower, Wayak is more disturbed than all the others.